So if you have a user that double clicks or clicks really often and you want to prohibit that, that's what I would like to talk to you about today. I prepared a tiny little bit over here. So basically the question was, what can I do if someone clicks very often on a button, but I want to do some action after the first click and to prohibit that person from further clicking? My initial answer was have a buffered event. And that was probably not the brightest idea. Let me just check on that one. So I have a buffered button down here. I click it and I click it and nothing happens until the buffering time is over. So we can take a look in here. I have this B bar items in here. It is the buffered button and there's a buffer. I just set it really high so that you can really see what I'm talking about. So pressing in here will do nothing until I leave it for 1.5 seconds roundabout, and then it will run. You can always see my actions as soon as I click something. The spin indicates that we are going to do something. So if I click that again, you can see this spin in here just indicates we're sending data and receiving stuff. So that's basically where I could think of where you want to prohibit the person from double clicking. Another one would be if you open a different window. What you basically might do is that the user clicks, you're doing a lot of calculation like getting data, and then you open the new window, and that way the user might be able to double click or to click a couple of times until the new dialog pops up, or if you have sent the data. So these are typical cases where it might happen that a user can double click or click more often. Yeah, that's basically where that might happen. The next idea I came up with was, let me just close this and open the T-bar, to have this single tap button. I added a timeout of 3,500 seconds, just again to have a huge timeout so that I can really show things. So if I click here, you can see data are sent, and this one gets toggled. If I continue clicking this one, nothing happens. It's just a single event happening in here. And I believe this was more or less what the person who asked during the SenchaCon was looking for. So what did I do in here? Let me open this. This one, what I'm doing is just I'm using a button and I'm saying enable toggle. So the user can press and you can see the toggle state. And what I'm saying in here is allow depress false, so the user cannot actively depress it. That would be one way to do it. And as soon as you've finished whatever you're trying to do, you can depress it programming wise. What I did for this example is I'm saying I'm adding a listener on before tap. And if you have something that is before an event, so on before tap, if you return a false state, then the tap event won't happen. If it is not pressed, then I allow to be pressed to run this event, this method, prepare unpress, with a timeout, and you saw that I set the timer to 3,500 milliseconds, and at that point I want to depress it again. Until then, I want to say return false. If it is pressed, I say return false, so that the tap event doesn't happen. That way the user can add a handle tap and only gets the tab event when it's not pressed. So right now I will get the tab event. Right now I won't. And you can see in here it's always the same function that responds and says, okay, now you can press or not. So with this, in case, I do not even have to say allow depress because I'm doing this on my own. So if I go in here, save it, rerun it, it will still have the same functionality. See? So that's basically what this timer in here is doing, this single press button is doing. So that's probably one idea. Now I would like to talk a bit more about the logic. When and how could we do this otherwise? The first thing is, as soon as we send data, we want to disable a lot of things most likely. As an example, I added here this these fields. So if I say here Torsten, I get everything is fine. If I press in here 1, I have a little, it must not be a number. This is fine, is not required, it's feel free. So all these different fields, and I want to send them to the server. And as soon as I send them, I want to disallow the user to add any more information into the field. So that's why I came up with this spinner idea in here. You already saw in here, if I press this, it starts indicating that data are sent. But now I want to disable everything in here, disable all buttons, but not the wink button. I always want to have this wink button being able to be clicked. But everything else should be disabled. And so let me just press it, and you can see that it's kind of working. Let me just wait for a bit. Yeah. So this is probably exactly the idea what the user had when he asked, I want to disable several clicks on a button because this is some really heavy computing in here, so that the spinner itself only shows up later. Let me repeat that, but with less of a timing. Let me just go here for 20,000 as repeat this. So going in here, you can see that first it counts all the way to 20,000, then it shows the spinner. And if you do this, a lot of different things might happen during the time when you do not overlay anything. So I could click any button during that time, and the tab event might be handled afterwards. And that is most likely something we don't want. We want to have control on at what time the user can do something. So this is why I named this Do It Wrong, right? Now let's go for the Do It Right. The Do It Right, the difference is that we say, okay, I have here the stress test right away starts. I'm setting the view model to sending, and this, let me just go with the second one that's easier to show what I want to have as a result. So if I press here, we get the spinner, we get these disabled down here, and still this heavy duty work runs, but at the same time I can press the wink button and it's popping up in here. So everything as I expect this to happen will happen. And so this is something where you have to think about before you start coding. What do I want to happen? Do I want to overlay everything? You could just add a mask to the viewport and everything will be masked. The user can't do anything further. But right now, I'm adding this X defer with 150 milliseconds. With this 150 milliseconds, the stress test will start after setting the view model to sending. And everything in here, you can see that my spinner is running on sending. I want to bind everything as disabled on sending. Click here, all the buttons in here are disabled and my spinner is running. So, with the exception of the wink button, sorry for that. So, if you think about what I did right now is that I set a fixed value of 150 milliseconds to give me ahead some time to do something before I start the calculation. On the other hand, this is just almost right, because we're having a fixed value in here. What happens if I want to have like the spinner running, but I'm exceeding these 150 milliseconds? Then again, the user could do things without me want him to do these things before my spinner shows up, or something like that. For example, you plan to show a new dialog and you want to pre-fill it with data you grab from the server. So first thing you would do is catch the data from the server and then create the dialog, because otherwise you might have some flickering inside the new dialog. You won't really know at what time you finished loading the data for the dialog. So what you would like to do is to overlay everything from the time of the button press until the time of really showing the dialog. For this example in here, I figured out that my computer's sweet point for this calculation is 15. Sometimes it will show everything correct. Sometimes it will go wrong. So if I reload this and I start the spinner, now everything is going fine. Let me redo this a couple of times to see now it shows it too late. So that's exactly why I said this is my sweet point for my computer. And other people might have computers that are not that powerful, so you always have to think about some others might have computers that are not that powerful, and therefore everything might work differently on their computer. So now we are going to the superwrite. Superwrite means that we are working with events. As soon as the data are loaded, as soon as, and so on. So what I did in my case with the superwrite is I do not have this additional xdefer around here, right? I just have the standard of setting it to true and setting it to false so that the animation in here, but what I do in here, I'm adding a callback function. And this callback function, just let me go down here, let me scroll up all to the top. I'm listening for the binding on sending. You remember that I'm setting the sending always first to ensure that the spinner and so on is disabled, the huge spinner is shown. And during that on sending, I'm asking, do I have a callback? If I have a callback, add this to my SpinnerManager. I wrote a SpinnerManager to ensure that I can call all these different spinners. I have one in here, I have a huge one in here. I can enable them or disable them. And for this one, I'm saying, okay, get my BOM panel, add a spinner which is huge, and if I do have a callback function, then my spinner functionality, let me just open that in Spinner Overlay. If I do have a callback function, you can see that in here, then I'm adding a listener on animation start. The huge spinner on these trees here. Let me just start that this one. That spinner has an animation, and it will start on the first frame of the animation. It will call my event, my callback event. So the callback event is doing only the standard things. It runs all callbacks that have been gathered on that, and it runs the callbacks. So my heavy duty work would run on this callback function. So right after the first frame of my animation. And that's typically what I prefer to do, to see, okay, I do have an event, my store has been loaded, I have all the data, and on that store load, I disable the spinner. So right now with the best solution, I always get the spinner first, and then it starts counting, and that's exactly what I want. In my case, in here, I'm saying the callback is the stress test, and then I start loading, and as soon as I do have a stress test in here, wait until the first frame. Again, it's a good idea at least to disable a button. You could disable it, or you could set it to toggled. For this, I would prefer to set it to toggle, so that the user can see that he pressed the button, but can't do anything further. But again, if you're waiting for a dialog to be shown and you don't want the person to press anything else, like the timer won't keep me from filling in here something. So the data are being sent and I still can change it. And then it might happen that you're sending some data about a form and you're sending the wrong data. This can't happen with the overlay in here. Think about what you would like to do before you do something. Think about which buttons do I want to keep enabled for a view for a certain event. The easiest thing definitely is to work with a view model, set sending, for example, and to have all these disabled states on the sending. Awesome. So thanks a lot again, and have a nice weekend.